What's up, guys, and welcome back to Beyond the Void Horror Podcast. My name is Alex, and today we're going to do a spoiler-free review of Fantasy Eye Roll. Fantasy Island. Fantasy Island! Part of the reason that I wanted to watch this movie, as I'm sure most of you were lured into this film, is because of the concept of Fantasy Island. When I was a kid, I used to watch a lot of Fantasy Island because it used to be a TV show that aired on TV between 77 and 84. It had a relatively similar concept to this, where complete strangers go to the island, live out their fantasies. It was a little bit more cute than it is in this movie, but they wanted to take that concept and make it a little bit darker, which kind of intrigued me. But, oh man, oof. Felt very, very cheap in a lot of ways, and it's the same thing. A story of a group of fucking strangers go to an island to live out their fantasies, and these fantasies are exactly what their fantasies are supposed to be. Some of them being a little darker, some of them being a little lighter, some of the fantasies just being so overdone that it was like the worst melodrama I've ever seen. Now, some of the actors in this, did what they could with the content they were given, and I don't necessarily fault them. Where I feel that this movie plunges is the dialogue and the writing, unfortunately. Now, to give you some sort of background on why this movie was made and who made it, Jeff Wadlow, who is the director of Kick-Ass 2, Truth or Dare, Cry Wolf. Also, it was written by Gillian Jacobs, who did Truth or Dare as well. In fact, this movie feels like Truth or Dare cast and everybody involved, because not only was Gillian Jacobs the writer, but Christopher Roach, who was the producer of Truth or Dare. Christopher Roach has done some writing, and he's done a lot in wrestling. So like WrestleMania 22, WWE Raw, events on the TV series. So that's the kind of writing that we're getting. I'm not trying to knock anybody for that style of writing, but I don't think it helped in this movie. Some of the cast even was in Truth or Dare, like Lucy Hale. We even had some pretty good talent in this movie, like Michael Pena and Michael Rooker, who you would think that might add to the flair of this movie in some way, but really it was just kind of paint by numbers kind of roles. Obviously, if you've seen the original Fantasy Island, they have a lot of nods to that material. And the guy who played the original Fantasy Island director is Ricardo Montalban, and he was very similar to Michael Pena's performance in this role. But I feel like he was very underutilized, as well as Michael Rooker, which I might add, Michael Pena, who I actually like, pales in comparison. Sorry. Ricardo was just way more charming for that role and way more energetic, I think, than Michael Pena portrayed him.
It's going to be a glorious day.
I mean, what are you going to do when you are handed this kind of writing, in my opinion? This is a fun concept, but a terrible dismount. In slight ways, if I was to make comparison to other movies, I feel like this would be kind of like, because the fantasies in this movie, I don't want to spoil it for you, although I don't think you should go see this in the movie anyway. So maybe if you aren't caring to see this movie at this point, just tell you right now, I think this was not a good movie, and it was a popcorn flick for me and my girlfriend to go see on Valentine's Day morning, and we had a really good time laughing at it many times. In fact, we laughed out loud hilariously at one of the more tragic moments in the movie. But I won't spoil it, but I will kind of go over some minor spoilers here. So if you don't want to listen, I'll totally understand. But just trust me on this. I would probably give this movie like a 3. I'm not trying to hate the movie because I'm sure there's some people that would enjoy this film and be like, why do you think it was that bad? Well, like, I don't think it's the worst movie I've ever seen, but it is definitely, for a movie that is supposed to be this mainstream thing, it felt like I was watching some TV show in the middle of like network television or something like that. It just was very cringy in a lot of places. That melodrama that I was talking about, oh my god. Eventually, these fantasies all happen, and there's this twisty plot that they try to focus on that it becomes ridiculous. They take one of the characters and then wrap everybody up in it. And then it's like all these fantasies are happening simultaneously into one. And that's about as spoilerific as I'll get. But because of that, you know, you're switching in between different fantasies and everybody's mixing in. In some ways, it reminds me of House 2, where they're going into different rooms and shit, and it's different parts of other worlds. Or maybe even something like My Science Project, where they're in a high school and they're going room to room in different dimensions and times. But those movies are infinitely better, in my opinion. And if you haven't seen them, go watch them. But this movie attempts to do something like that, but it is so not good.
Sit on this, butt plug.
Instead of just making the movie feel like you were in different fantasies, like entirely, they focus it all on one island, and the one island is it feels very unimaginative. There is some cool, you know, editing and things that they did to kind of make it seem like you were in this fantasy and stuff, and, you know, they did what they could, I guess. The movie had a $7 million budget, but man, like, I feel like they could have done a lot more. In the beginning of the movie, I'm like, okay, well, let's see what these fantasies unravel and see how crazy they really get. And will it get dark? No, it doesn't. Meh. So convoluted by the end that you really detach yourself from the story at all. And some of the set design, while I understand that they're doing this in the movie to try to give this sort of other place on the island, it just felt like a set, and it felt like I was watching a really bad TV show that I shouldn't be watching. Maybe they should have just gone for the TV show approach and just done like a 6-episode fucking run of Fantasy Island again and done individual stories. But they try to get a little too clever for themselves and wrap them all up together, and it just fell apart. I try to be a little bit more forgiving of most movies, but this one is just a rough sit. There were some things in it that made us laugh. I guess that's worth something. I don't know what I was expecting, but I was kind of hoping that it would go a little bit darker maybe, and that's just the horror fiend in me. But I mean, they did make the trailers seem like that. Some of the nods in the movie, by the way, and if you've ever seen the original Fantasy Island, one of the big things in that movie, the moniker, the plane. Oh, and they do that lazily, I might add. And how they tie in by the end of the movie, that is kind of ridiculous. Some of the people in the theater that I was with were just laughing at the movie at that part. And this movie didn't even get the normal Thursday release so that everybody could go see it and everything. And I think that might have been intentional. Ultimately, I wouldn't see this at the movie theater, if at all. Maybe catch it on a streaming service or something like that. I'm sorry. You know, I'm sure everybody that's been a part of this has better potential and they could do more. And maybe the $7 million budget hindered it from actually doing it, because they do a lot on $7 million, but it doesn't really reflect here in this movie. A lot of it was just annoying, and I would skip it if you're thinking about seeing it in the theater. But what do you guys think? Have you seen the movie? Do you plan on seeing the movie? Is it what you expected by hearing what I had to say about it? Let me know in the comment section down below. If you haven't already, please do hit the like and subscribe button. Thank you guys so much for stopping by, and as always, long live the void.